All right, let's jump right into this, because we have a really fascinating puzzle on our hands. We're looking at this massive, almost illogical shift happening on the world's oceans right now, a change that's literally redrawing the map of global trade as we speak. So this is the big question for today's explainer. Why on earth would a shipping company intentionally choose a route that adds thousands of miles, weeks of travel, and millions in extra costs to a single trip? I mean, it goes against every single rule of modern logistics. And yet, it's happening on a huge scale. And let's be super clear here. We're not just talking about a few ships taking a scenic route. No, we are witnessing the world's longest detour, a fundamental rerouting of the very arteries that keep global commerce pumping. This right here is the whole story in a nutshell. The very definition of the best route has been flipped on its head. The old logic, shortest and fastest always wins, that's been completely thrown out the window. So let's unpack exactly why that is. Okay, so it all starts with the world's most famous shortcut, the Suez Canal. For more than 150 years, this has been the absolute go-to for getting from Asia to Europe. But that shortcut, well, for all intents and purposes, it's broken. To really get your head around the scale of this, just look at this number. Before all the disruptions, the Suez Canal was handling about 10% of all seaborne trade on the entire planet. 10%. That is a mind-boggling amount of, well, everything, from your phone to your food to the gas in your car. And this right here perfectly explains why that's a problem. The Suez is what's known as a maritime choke point. Now, these spots are incredibly efficient, but that efficiency is also their greatest weakness. It's like having only one highway into a major city. If that one highway gets blocked, the whole system grinds to a halt. And this wasn't some snap decision made overnight. As you can see from this timeline, carriers started pulling back in late 2023. They even tried to go back for a bit, but by early 2024, the conflict in the region had just gotten too hot, forcing this massive exodus of the big players around Africa. This whole crisis forced a complete pivot in thinking. A brand new logic started to take over global trade, a logic that puts reliability way, way above pure speed. This slide lays out that new thinking perfectly. See, in normal times, it's a simple math problem. Time is money, so get there as fast as you can. But when a crisis hits, the math totally changes. An unpredictable route, even a shorter one, means massive delays, insane insurance costs, and real danger. Suddenly, the slow and steady route isn't just an option, it's the only smart option. And this table just breaks that new math down beautifully. Yeah, sure, going around the Cape of Good Hope adds 10 to 14 days. That's a lot. But just look at the other columns. Security risk, low. Insurance, stable. And here's the kicker for any modern supply chain. Schedule reliability, high. If you're a business trying to keep shelves stocked, that predictability is absolutely worth paying for. Of course, a decision this big doesn't happen in a vacuum. It sends out these huge ripple effects, creating a really complex map of winners and losers all over the world. So let's start with the cost. This quote from the shipping giant Hapag-Lloyd just lays it out there. An extra $40 to $50 million a week. That is a staggering amount of money. And that cost doesn't just vanish, it gets baked right into the price of everything on those ships, which eventually means we all pay a little more. And this is where it starts to feel really real. We're talking about delays getting crucial things like food and medicine to people who need them. We're seeing shipping rates and fuel costs go all over the place, and retailers are pulling their hair out trying to manage inventory. It's a powerful reminder of how a problem in one tiny bit of water can cause headaches on store shelves thousands of miles away. But a disruption this huge isn't just a story about costs and problems. It also creates these new centers of gravity, and with them, some pretty surprising new opportunities. Think about it. With thousands of ships now taking the long way around Africa, they all need new places to stop, refuel, and get supplies. This has suddenly put a huge spotlight on several African ports. Places like Tangier in Morocco, Walvis Bay in Namibia, and Port Louis in Mauritius are booming. They're quickly becoming these critical, strategic hubs in a whole new global trade network. So what's the big lesson here? What does all this teach us about the system we all rely on? Well, ultimately, it's a lesson about resilience and the real price of adapting to a new, much less predictable world. Here's the key thing to remember. The system didn't break, it bent. Global trade is incredibly resilient. It just finds another way.
But that resilience isn't free. What we're watching in real time is the entire system having to reprice risk, reroute its flows, and find a whole new balance.
Now, this data from the UN is super telling. Look at this first bar. The actual amount of stuff being shipped, the volume, it only grew a little bit. But now look at the second bar, ton miles. That's a measure of how far all that stuff traveled. It grew by a whopping 6%. The reason is simple. It's basically the same amount of cargo, it's just traveling a much, much longer distance to get where it's going. And if you want a stark visual of the impact on the Suez Canal itself, wow, just look at this. By May 2024, the amount of cargo passing through was still down by about 70% from what it used to be. A 70% drop. That really paints a picture of just how massive this diversion is. So when you boil it all down, the reason for this great detour is actually pretty simple. The world didn't find a better route or a faster route. It was forced to take a longer, more expensive one. All because the shortcut it had relied on for over a century just didn't feel safe enough anymore. So, we've seen that the global trade system is incredibly adaptive. It's flexible. It can take a huge hit and just work around the problem. But that flexibility comes at a cost. All those extra miles, all that extra fuel, all those extra dollars, they have to be paid by someone. Which leaves us with one last question to think about. Who is it that ultimately pays the price? Thanks for tuning in.